There's a strange kind of loneliness that only begins once you start noticing things other people were never meant to see. Not danger, not violence, just small things. The pause before someone says, "I'm happy for you." The smile that arrives half a second too late. The way a room changes when a certain person walks in and everyone suddenly becomes slightly less honest. Most people never notice it. Or maybe they do. Maybe they just learned how to survive by pretending they didn't. But you were never very good at pretending. You sit in a crowded room and feel the distance immediately. Not physical distance, something colder, like everyone else received a script before they arrived, and yours got lost somewhere in the dark. So you watch. You notice the friend who laughs the loudest, never lets anyone ask how he's really doing. You notice the couple holding hands across the table while silently bleeding resentment into the air between them. You notice the man who keeps calling himself kind while his wife slowly disappears every time he speaks. And the worst part is, you can't turn it off. You tried. God, you tried. You tried forcing yourself to relax, to stop reading into things, to stop feeling the shift in energy when someone says your name with affection but means obligation. You told yourself you were overthinking, too sensitive, too intense. That's what they called you, wasn't it? The one who feels too much, the one who takes things personally, the one who makes everything deep. So eventually, you stopped speaking as much, not because you had nothing to say, because every time you said what you saw, the room changed. People became careful around you, not scared. Careful, like they suddenly realized the mask wasn't holding together as well as they thought. And maybe that was the moment it started. The silence, not the peaceful kind. The kind that grows slowly inside a person after too many nights spent questioning whether their perception is a gift or a wound. You started sitting alone more often. Long drives, late walks, music playing softly through headphones, while the rest of the world kept performing happiness like it was part of the rent. And somewhere in those quiet moments, you began noticing something else. Your exhaustion was not coming from being alone. It was coming from being surrounded by people who kept asking you to betray what you felt, just to make them comfortable. That changes a person, slowly, like water entering a cracked wall during winter. At first, nothing looks different. Then one day, the entire structure starts splitting from the inside. Carl Jung once wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. You did not understand that sentence when you were younger. Now, you do, because you have watched people destroy relationships, lie to themselves, stay in places that are killing them, just to avoid sitting alone in a quiet room with the truth. And maybe that is why your silence became heavier over the years. Not because you hate people, because part of you no longer knows how to stand inside something false without feeling your spirit leave your body a little. So now you sit there quietly, watching, listening, feeling the hidden weight beneath every conversation. And sometimes you wonder if this is what broke you. But seeing the mask is only the beginning. The real pain begins when you realize you have been wearing one too. You were not always this quiet. There was a time when you tried to explain. You explained why something felt wrong. You explained why someone's words did not match their eyes. You explained why the room felt heavier after a certain person entered it. And every time you did, someone smiled gently and told you to stop overthinking. They made it sound kind, like they were helping you return to peace. But it was not peace they wanted from you. It was silence. The kind of silence that keeps the room comfortable. The kind of silence that protects the lie everyone has agreed to live inside. So you began to doubt yourself. Maybe you were too sensitive. Maybe you were imagining things. Maybe the small shift in someone's voice meant nothing. Maybe the apology that felt empty was still an apology. Maybe the compliment that landed like a blade was only a compliment. You tried to be reasonable. You tried to become easier. You tried to soften your own knowing until it no longer disturbed anyone. But the body remembers what the mind is told to forget. Your stomach tightened before the betrayal happened. Your chest knew before the message stopped coming. Your nervous system heard the goodbye long before their mouth had the courage to say it. And then, weeks later, the truth arrived. Quietly. Exactly as you had felt it would. Someone lied. Someone left. Someone used your kindness until there was nothing warm left in you. Someone smiled in your face while already building a story where you were the difficult one. And still, no one came back to say you were right. That is the part no one talks about. Not the pain of being right. The pain of being right alone. The pain of watching reality confirm what your soul already knew, while everyone who called you dramatic suddenly changes the subject. That kind of loneliness does not begin when people leave. It begins when they stay, but make you abandon yourself in order to remain close to them. It begins when you realize that being understood often costs less than being honest, and you were paying too much. So you started making yourself smaller. You laughed when something did not feel funny. You nodded when your whole body said no. You kept listening to stories that had too many missing pieces. You forgave before your anger had even been allowed to speak. Not because you were weak, because somewhere inside you, there was still a child who believed that if they were gentle enough, quiet enough, useful enough, they would not be left behind. That child learned to read the room before entering it, to sense moods, to predict disappointment, to become whatever kept love from disappearing. And maybe that is where your gift began, not as wisdom, as survival. You learned to notice the smallest changes because small changes once meant danger. A different tone, a colder look, a silence that lasted too long, a door closing harder than usual. Other people call it intuition now, but you know the truth. Before it became intuition, it was vigilance. Before it became insight, it was fear. And this is why you feel so tired. You are not only seeing the present, you are scanning every room with the eyes of every younger version of you that had to stay alert to be safe. That is not madness. That is memory. But memory can become a prison when no one teaches it that the war is over. So you walk through life feeling everything before it is spoken. And people mistake your depth for suspicion. They call you intense because you can feel what they have buried. They call you difficult because you ask for what is real. They call you distant because you stopped offering your warmth to places that only knew how to take it. But beneath all of that, you are not cold. You are tired of being punished for noticing. You are tired of apologizing for the truth your body kept whispering before your mind could prove it. You are tired of pretending that loneliness is the price of being honest, because it is not. Loneliness is not always the absence of people. Sometimes it is the presence of people who require you to disappear slowly in order to be loved by them. And once you understand that, you stop asking why you cannot fit in. you begin asking something quieter, something more dangerous. What part of me have I been hiding, just to remain acceptable to people who never saw me clearly in the first place? There's a mask people wear so long, they eventually forget there is a face underneath it. It begins innocently. A smile at the wrong moment. A polite answer when the truth would be too heavy. A laugh offered to keep the conversation from collapsing. At first, it is just survival. Then it becomes personality. Then one day, the mask starts speaking before the soul does. You have seen this. You have sat across from someone whose mouth said they were happy for you, while something small and wounded moved behind their eyes. You have listened to someone say they were fine, while their hands kept betraying them. You have watched a man call himself peaceful, while every person close to him seemed to shrink when he entered the room, and no one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they did. Maybe everyone noticed. But the agreement was to keep eating dinner, to keep smiling, to keep the surface clean. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, but you did not need the word. You knew the feeling, the cold distance between what people show and what they are trying not to show. The persona is not evil. It is the part of us that learned how to survive being seen only halfway. The professional voice, the generous face, the calm answer, the version of ourselves we send into the world so the world does not ask too many questions. Everyone has one. You have one too. That is the part that hurts. Because for a long time, you thought your pain came from seeing through other people. But slowly, you began to realize your own mask was heavy too. You wore it every time you said, "I'm fine," when something inside you was falling apart. You wore it every time you acted unbothered while replaying a conversation until sunrise. You wore it when you became the easy one, the understanding one, the one who needed very little, so no one would feel guilty for giving you almost nothing. And the more you saw through the masks around you, the harder it became to keep wearing yours. That is when the first crack appeared. Not loudly, no dramatic collapse, just a small refusal inside you, a quiet no. No to laughing when your heart was not in it. No to staying warm for people who only came close when they were cold. No to pretending a relationship was safe when your body had already started preparing to run. And once that crack appears, you cannot unsee it. You begin to recognize the theater, the friend who performs loyalty in public but disappears in private, the coworker who calls everyone family while stepping over anyone who slows them down, the lover who says they want honesty until your honesty reaches the part of them they were trying to hide. You stop hearing only words. You hear the hunger underneath them, the need to be admired, the fear of being exposed, the quiet bargaining people do with themselves so they never have to change. And this is where your gift becomes lonely. Because seeing the mask does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. Responsible for what you do with what you see. You can expose people. You can judge them. You can turn your perception into a weapon and call it truth. Or you can look deeper. You can remember that every mask was built around a wound. Even the false smile, even the hidden agenda, even the person who hurt you while pretending they did not know what they were doing. This does not excuse them. It only keeps you from becoming like them. Because the moment you see clearly, your shadow begins to wake. Not as rage, not at first, as temptation. The temptation to become cold, to use what you know, to punish people with the precision of your silence, to make them feel the same invisibility they once gave you. And that is a real beginning of shadow work. Not noticing darkness in others, not naming hypocrisy in the room, but standing still when you finally notice the same darkness moving quietly inside yourself. That is the moment the mask stops being about them. It becomes yours, and the question changes. Not, why are they so false, but where have I been false to? Because seeing the mask is painful, but seeing your own mask, that is where the real work begins. There is a punishment for seeing too clearly. It does not always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like concern. A soft voice, a careful smile, someone telling you that you are reading too much into things. They do not raise their voice. They do not need to. They simply make you feel unstable for trusting what you felt. That is how it starts. You say something is off. They say you are anxious. You say someone's kindness feels calculated. They say you are too guarded. You say the apology did not feel real. They say you never let things go. And slowly, the room stops asking whether you are right. It starts asking what is wrong with you for noticing. That is a strange kind of violence. Not loud enough to prove, not clear enough to name, but your body knows. Your body knows when someone is not responding to your words. But defending the mask, your words have touched. You have felt this before. The moment after you speak honestly. A small silence. A glance exchanged across the table. Someone suddenly laughing too hard. Someone changing the subject with the speed of a person trying to close a door before smoke enters the room. And then it happens. You become the issue. Not the lie, not the betrayal, not the tension everyone was already feeling. You, your tone, your timing, your sensitivity, your inability to just let it go. This is how groups protect themselves from truth. They do not always deny what happened. They make the person who saw it unbearable. You learn this the hard way. Maybe it was in a family, a dinner table where everyone knew which subjects were forbidden. Maybe it was in a friendship group, a place where loyalty meant pretending not to see who was quietly being used. Maybe it was in a relationship where every time you asked for honesty, you were made to feel cruel for needing clarity. So you began to speak less, not because you stopped seeing, because you understood something. Some people do not want the truth. They want the comfort of being seen exactly as they perform themselves. And your perception interrupted the performance. That is why they called you difficult. Not because you were impossible to love, because you were no longer easy to fool. But this is where the danger begins. Because rejection can harden into pride if you are not careful. You can start believing that because you see through people, you are above them. That is not awakening. That is another mask, a darker one. The shadow loves this moment. It whispers that you should become untouchable, that you should never explain again, never care again, never need anyone again. It tells you that coldness is freedom, but coldness is not freedom. Coldness is what happens when pain learns how to protect itself without healing. And you are not here to become another person hiding behind another mask. You are here to stop betraying what you know without losing your heart in the process. That is the harder path, to see clearly without becoming cruel, to step back without becoming empty, to stop explaining without turning silence into revenge. There was a day you learned this. Maybe you remember it. You finally said the thing everyone had been avoiding. You did not shout. You did not attack. You only named what was already standing in the room. And they turned on you, not all at once. That would have been easier. They did it quietly. a missed invitation, a colder message, a look that said you had broken the agreement. Not the agreement to be kind, the agreement to keep pretending. And for a while, you thought you had lost them. Then something deeper inside, you answered, no, I lost the version of myself who had to lie to belong here. That sentence does not come easily. It comes after grief, after shame, after nights where you wonder if being honest will always cost this much. But eventually, you begin to understand. People do not always reject you because you are wrong. Sometimes they reject you because your clarity asks something of them they are not ready to give. Accountability, honesty, a face without the mask. And not everyone is prepared to survive that kind of mirror. So let them turn away. Let the room grow uncomfortable. Let the false warmth disappear. You do not need to become harsh. You only need to stop handing your perception back to people who keep asking you to doubt it. But be careful. The world may punish the one who sees clearly, but your shadow will punish you even more deeply if you keep using blindness as the price of love. The shadow does not arrive like a monster. It arrives like a tired part of you, finally knocking from the other side of the door. For years, you were taught to fear it. Your anger, your distance, your refusal, your capacity to leave without explaining yourself into exhaustion. You called these things ugly, selfish, cold, too much. So you buried them. You buried the no that rose in your throat. You buried the rage that appeared when someone crossed the same line again. You buried the quiet knowledge that certain people only loved the version of you that was easy to access. And because you were taught to be good, you mistook self-abandonment for kindness. You stayed patient while resentment gathered in your chest. You stayed available while your body begged for distance. You kept forgiving people who never had to meet the version of you that was angry enough to protect you. That is how the shadow grows. Not because you are dark, because something honest in you was never allowed to stand in the light. There is a moment in every awakening when the person you have been performing can no longer carry the person you have become. It may happen quietly, in a bathroom mirror after midnight, in a parked car after a conversation that drained the last softness out of you, in bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing you are not sad because someone left. You are sad because you kept leaving yourself first. That realization has weight. It does not comfort you. It sits beside you like a black coat on an empty chair, familiar, patient, waiting. And when you finally look at it, you see that the darkness was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to return what you gave away. Your anger was not evil. It was the border around your dignity. Your silence was not emptiness. It was the place where your soul stopped negotiating. Your detachment was not a lack of love. It was love no longer willing to die in places that kept calling its suffering loyalty. This is where you stop romanticizing your pain. You stop calling every wound wisdom. You stop calling every lost destiny. You stop making poetry out of patterns that were slowly killing you. And you ask the question you were avoiding. How many times did I abandon myself just to remain chosen? How many times did I smile so no one would notice the betrayal? How many times did I become understanding because I was afraid that being honest would make me unlovable? The shadow does not answer with words. It answers with memory. A hand pulling back when you reached for closeness. A voice becoming smaller around someone who needed you powerless. A version of you saying yes while something inside you went completely still. You remember not to suffer again, to retrieve yourself. That is what real shadow work feels like. Not becoming dangerous, not becoming untouchable, not turning into the person who hurt you. It feels like walking into the basement of your own life and finding all the parts of yourself you locked away to keep other people comfortable. The ambitious one, the angry one, the one who wanted more, the one who knew, the one who could leave, the one who stopped confusing being needed with being loved. You do not let them take over. That would only be another form of possession. You sit with them. You listen. You let them tell you what your goodness was not allowed to say. And slowly, you begin to understand why you were so exhausted. You were not carrying only your pain. You were carrying all the selves you were afraid to become. The self who would disappoint people. The self who would say no. The self who would walk away before being destroyed. The self who would stop apologizing for needing peace. And maybe that is why your silence now feels different. It is no longer the silence of someone who has nothing left. It is the silence of someone whose abandoned parts are finally coming home. But do not rush this. The shadow is powerful, and power without tenderness becomes another prison. You are not integrating the shadow so you can dominate a room. You are integrating it so you no longer disappear inside one. That is the difference. That is the line. And once you cross it, you stop asking the world for permission to protect what is sacred in you. There comes a point when silence stops being a wound. It becomes a room inside you where no one else gets to rearrange the furniture. At first, people may not understand it. They will think you are angry. They will think you are distant. They will think you are punishing them by no longer explaining every change in your face. But you are not punishing anyone. You are simply no longer holding open every door inside yourself for people who never learned how to enter gently. This is the beginning of individuation, not as a concept, as a quiet withdrawal of your soul from places where it was being spent too cheaply. You stop asking every room to approve of your presence. You stop offering your deepest thoughts to people who only know how to turn depth into debate. You stop mistaking access for intimacy. Something in you begins to gather itself, slowly, like a man collecting letters from a house he no longer lives in. One by one, you take your energy back from the friend whose crises always mattered more than your silence, from the family role that taught you peace meant swallowing the truth, from the lover who needed your warmth but feared your clarity, from every imagined conversation where you kept trying to make them understand what they were committed to misunderstanding. You take it back, not with revenge, with recognition. And this recognition changes your face, not in a dramatic way. People may only notice that you are harder to reach, that your answers are calmer, that your eyes no longer rush to prove innocence when someone misunderstands you. You let them misunderstand. Not because you do not care, because you finally understand that some explanations are just another form of begging. And you are tired of begging to be seen by people standing with their eyes closed. There is power in this, a quiet kind. Not the power that needs witnesses, not the power that announces itself, not the power that turns pain into a performance of superiority. This power is smaller, deeper. It looks like not sending the paragraph. It looks like leaving the room before your body has to scream. It looks like hearing the old guilt rise and not obeying it. For the first time, your silence does not feel like fear. It feels like shelter. And inside that shelter, you begin to meet yourself without the noise. You learn what you actually think when no one is asking you to be agreeable. You learn what you actually want when guilt is not choosing for you. You learn which connections feel like home and which only feel familiar because they resemble old wounds. That distinction will change your life because not everything familiar is safe and not everything lonely is wrong. Sometimes the loneliest season is the first honest one. The season where you stop performing belonging. The season where you stop laughing with people who never asked why your eyes looked tired. The season where you realize you would rather sit alone in truth than be surrounded by people who only love your mask. This is not bitterness. This is the soul regaining its original shape. The world may call it detachment. But what is really happening is simpler. You are no longer leaking yourself into places that cannot hold you. You are learning to be present without offering yourself as a sacrifice. You are learning to care without collapsing. You are learning to love without becoming available for your own erasure. That is silent power, not the absence of feeling, the discipline of no longer letting every feeling decide where your life goes. You still notice. You still feel the room change. You still hear the small lie under the polished sentence. You still know when someone is performing closeness while keeping their real self hidden somewhere behind their eyes. But now, you do not rush to expose it. You do not rush to fix it. You do not rush to make it mean something about your worth. You simply see, and then you choose. That is what they do not understand about your silence. It is not emptiness, it is selection. It is the moment your soul stops being an open field where anyone can leave footprints. And when that happens, you do not become unreachable. You become reachable only by what is real. The deepest healing is not learning how to stop seeing. It is learning how to see without bleeding every time the world reveals itself. Because you will still notice. You will still feel the pause, the false warmth, the compliment that asks for something in return, the apology that wants forgiveness without change. Your mind will still catch what others miss. Your body will still know when the room is telling a story no one has spoken aloud. But now, something is different. You do not have to enter every truth you notice. You do not have to explain every shift in energy. You do not have to turn every wound into a conversation. You do not have to make every person who feels wrong finally admit what you already know. That is where your freedom begins, not in being understood, in no longer needing understanding from people who benefit from misunderstanding you. There are 3 things to practice now, not as rules, as quiet returns. The first is energy awareness. After you leave someone, listen to what remains in your body. Do you feel clearer or smaller? Do you feel more like yourself or like you had to edit your soul to survive the conversation? This question will tell you more than their words ever could. Because some people love you in a way that brings you back to yourself. And some people love you in a way that slowly trains you to disappear. The second is sacred silence. Not silence as punishment. Not silence as manipulation. Silence as protection for what is still healing. You do not owe every room the truth you nearly died learning. You do not owe every person a map to the parts of you they never handled with care. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is say less and watch what someone does with the space your explanation used to occupy. Their response will teach you. If they get curious, there may be safety. If they get angry, there was control. If they disappear, they were attached to your availability, not your truth. The third is gentle detachment. This is not becoming numb. Numbness is only pain wearing armor. Gentle detachment is softer. It means you can love someone and still admit they are not safe for your nervous system. You can miss a place and still know you cannot go back. You can understand why someone became who they are and still refuse to be wounded by them again. That is maturity, not coldness, not superiority, not the darkness swallowing your heart, just a deeper kind of loyalty. Loyalty to the part of you that kept whispering the truth even when you did not want to hear it. For so long, you believed your awareness was the curse. But maybe the curse was never that you saw too much. Maybe the curse was that no one taught you what to do with what you saw. So you turned perception into anxiety. You turned intuition into obsession. You turned clarity into a courtroom where you kept trying to prove your pain was real. But you do not have to prove it anymore. You can put the evidence down. You can stop preparing arguments for people who have already chosen their version of the story. You can let your life become the answer, quietly, cleanly, without revenge. And one day, you will notice something strange. The same gift that once made you feel exiled will begin to feel like a lantern, not a weapon, not a curse, a lantern. It will show you where to stand, who to trust slowly, when to leave, when to speak, when to let silence carry the dignity your words used to beg for. And you will still be alone sometimes, but it will not feel the same because there is a loneliness that empties you, and there is a solitude that gives you back to yourself. You are learning the difference. You are learning that seeing clearly does not require hating what you see. You are learning that softness can have boundaries. You are learning that the shadow does not come to make you cruel. It comes to return the parts of you that love alone could not protect. So if you have felt like you see too much, ask yourself this. What part of you has been silent the longest, just to be accepted by people who never truly heard you? And when you find the answer, do not rush to explain it. Sit with it. Let it breathe. Let it come home. Because the moment you stop abandoning that part of yourself, your silence stops being a wound. It becomes power. So if you have felt like you see too much, ask yourself this. What part of you has been silent the longest, just to be accepted by people who never truly heard you? Do not rush the answer. Let it rise slowly. Because sometimes the part of you that feels the darkest is only the part that has been waiting the longest to come home. If this spoke to something you have never been able to explain, write one word in the comments. Silent. Not for me, for the part of you that is finally done disappearing. And if this is the kind of darkness you are learning to understand, subscribe to Silent Shadow Psychology. This channel is for the ones who feel deeply, see quietly, and are learning to become whole without becoming cruel. The next video will take you deeper into the shadow and why the people who once controlled your emotions begin to lose power the moment you stop explaining yourself. Until then, see clearly, stay gentle, and do not abandon yourself again.